Burkina Faso is building a city, but it's not for the rich. No investors, no rent, no foreign aid, just 50,000 free homes given directly to the homeless, the displaced, and the forgotten. Why is President Ibrahim Traoré doing this? And how is he pulling it off without the West? Let's find out.
In a world where urban development is often synonymous with luxury, investment, and high-rises catering to the elite, something extraordinary is happening in the heart of West Africa. Just outside Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso, a city is being built. Not for tourists, not for investors, not even for the middle class, but for those most often ignored. The homeless, the displaced, the people left behind by war, poverty, and policy failure. This isn't a UN-led initiative. It's not funded by the IMF or backed by an international NGO. No donor logos are stamped on the buildings. There are no glossy brochures, no ribbon-cutting ceremonies. And yet, 50,000 homes are being constructed, completely free of charge, for those who have lost everything. At the center of this unprecedented development is Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the 36-year-old leader of Burkina Faso. Known globally for his blunt stance on foreign interference and regional security, Traoré's latest move isn't about military strategy. It's about human dignity. It's about giving people a permanent place to call home. And it's turning heads across the continent and beyond. The first signs came quietly. Earth movers arrived in a dusty, overlooked stretch of land just beyond the capital. Foundation trenches appeared. Cement was poured. Roads began to snake across what had been dry, unused terrain. There were no TV crews, no Western consultants offering expertise, just a coordinated swarm of engineers, masons, and planners, many in uniform, working methodically, without grand speeches or social media hype. Local news helicopters eventually captured the scale of what was unfolding. Dozens of building blocks, hundreds of rooftops, entire neighborhoods rising in unison. Not some private development, a city. But this wasn't just any housing project. It was strategic, symbolic, subversive. Burkina Faso has been fighting one of Africa's worst internal displacement crises. More than 2 million citizens have been uprooted in recent years, fleeing militant violence, political instability, and the slow collapse of rural communities due to drought and economic neglect. Many now live in makeshift shelters, plastic sheets stretched over wood frames, on the outskirts of cities ill-equipped to handle them. These informal camps rarely make headlines, and the people living in them often feel invisible. Until now. What Traoré is doing defies the usual formula. Instead of treating the displaced as temporary burdens to be managed with aid and bureaucracy, he's flipping the script. He's making them the priority and giving them the keys to real homes. The first phase includes 12,000 houses. Not tents, not trailers. Homes with plumbing, electricity, paved roads, and access to water built to last. These aren't hidden settlements on the margins. They are the city. They are the plan. Eyewitnesses describe the development zone as almost militarized in its precision. No Western contractors. No relief workers handing out rations. Just local labor and discipline. Rows of buildings in straight lines. Utilities laid out in advance. Security enforced by the state. Inside government circles, some are calling this initiative a civilian fortification. A bold term that reflects the belief that stable housing is not just a social service, but a strategic defense against chaos, against extremism, against the loss of hope. There's truth in that logic. In a country like Burkina Faso, where entire villages have been emptied overnight and children grow up watching their communities vanish, housing isn't just a question of shelter. It's a question of identity. Traoré's administration has taken that idea seriously. This isn't just a top-down rollout. It's a redefinition of who belongs, who gets counted, who gets cared for. Widows are being prioritized. So are disabled citizens who have fallen through the cracks of traditional villages. Former soldiers, long ignored by the state after years of service, are receiving invitations to live in dignity, not fight again. Youth-headed households, where teenagers have been forced to become guardians, are being offered units alongside trauma support services. And perhaps most astonishingly, families with no paperwork, no national ID, no birth certificates, no official records, are being manually verified through community leaders and oral testimony. In most systems, these people would be erased. Here, they're being seen. The decision to build without foreign aid has allowed Traoré to bypass the traps that typically kill African infrastructure before it's born. Donor delays, bloated budgets, endless audits, imported consultants. Instead, the project relies on local suppliers, state-owned construction teams, and military engineering units. It's not just cheaper, it's faster, more efficient, and more sovereign. Some outside observers scoff. They call it unsustainable. They question the costs. But none can deny what's happening. Burkina Faso, a country often labeled as one of the poorest in the world, is building a city for the most vulnerable members of its population, without asking permission and without waiting for praise. And this is only the beginning. The blueprints extend far beyond houses. They sketch out a city of the future, one designed not around commerce or prestige, but around human survival, dignity, and stability. Traoré City, as some have started calling it, isn't modeled after Paris or Dubai. It's modeled after memory, the memory of what people had before war took it away. Step into the heart of this new city rising in Burkina Faso, and the first thing you notice isn't the buildings. It's the silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but of function, the kind that only exists in places where systems are actually working. Solar panels glint quietly on rooftops. Water pipes hum beneath paved roads. Homes breathe with power from their own grid. There are no diesel generators, no exposed wires, no cluttered chaos. It's orderly, intentional, purpose-built, not to impress foreign investors, but to serve real people with real needs. This is what happens when a city is built from scratch. Not inherited, not borrowed, not imposed, but designed deliberately. Not for prestige, but for healing. Traoré didn't just call for homes to be built. He demanded a complete living ecosystem, with sustainability woven into its core. Engineers and urban designers, most of them young and local, mapped neighborhoods around what they called community cores. These are hubs that bundle everything vital: clinics, schools, clean water taps, and markets. And no house is more than 10 minutes away from one. There's no need for cars here. The streets are wide and walkable. For the elderly and disabled, every path includes flat ramps, handrails, and access points from the start. These weren't added later as charity. They were part of the first drawings. Transport? All electric. Small solar-charged buses connect every neighborhood to farms, workshops, and the city center. There's no gas station in sight, no combustion engines choking the air. Instead of retrofitting old systems with green fixes, Traoré City started green from the first brick. And that's only the surface. Underneath the soil lies one of the city's most quietly revolutionary features: a subsurface irrigation network. It captures gray water from sinks and showers and redistributes it to grow crops, right on the city's perimeter. Maize, okra, sorghum, all planted and maintained as part of the urban plan. Here, the city is not just self-sustaining, it feeds itself. And nothing is imported unless absolutely necessary. Building materials are sourced locally. Bricks are made using compressed earth block technology, a low-emission method developed by Burkina Faso engineers. It eliminates the need for giant factories and high-carbon outputs. Windows are shaded by design to cool homes naturally, reducing the need for air conditioning. Even internet infrastructure has been rethought. Instead of handing over access to international telecoms, the city is wired through a newly built public fiber grid, owned and operated by a Burkina Faso state partner. That's no small thing in a continent where internet access is often dominated by foreign firms with foreign rules. This isn't just sustainable development, it's sovereign development. And the design team? Not some Parisian consultancy, not a World Bank urban unit. They were Burkina Faso, young, unproven. Most had never touched a project this size. but they were trusted. And now they've built something that's attracting the attention of urban planners across the continent. Some are calling it Africa's first fully sovereign smart city. But to understand why that matters, you have to understand how cities in Africa are usually built. For decades, urban development on the continent has followed a predictable script. Loans from the IMF or World Bank are secured. Foreign firms win contracts. Construction begins, slowly. Budgets balloon. Deadlines stretch. Projects stall or get reshaped to fit donor criteria. The results are often half-finished structures or sterile luxury estates built for outsiders. Traoré ripped up that script. He bypassed international lenders. No IMF branding, no USAID oversight, no European Union audit reports, no UN contractors, no pilot program delays. Instead, he used national funds, local labor, and a decentralized supply chain. His teams included community members from the start, especially those who would eventually live in the city. Before a single trench was dug, planners visited the camps. They listened to women about kitchen needs. They asked elders where mosques should sit. They spoke with youth about classroom proximity. One engineer put it simply, "We didn't design the city from paper, we designed it from memory." And the governance of the city mirrors that philosophy. Each neighborhood will elect a local council. One seat is reserved for youth, one for women. Mobile legal teams will patrol weekly to resolve disputes, blending customary law with modern practice. It's not just about housing, it's about self-determination. This kind of design isn't about aesthetics, it's about recovery. Recovery from war, from loss, from a system that made millions feel invisible. The homes are modest, but what they offer is not. They offer belonging. In most humanitarian responses, displaced people are seen as temporary problems. Aid camps are built with that mindset. They're not places to live, but to wait. Wait for permission. Wait for aid. Wait for somewhere else. Traoré's city says, "This is your place. You're not tenants. You're owners. You're citizens." Each family receives a deed, not just a lease. Widows who lost everything now hold keys. Teen-headed households now sleep under roofs they own. Former soldiers, once discarded, are returning, not as fighters, but as neighbors. And that message is powerful, not just for Burkina Faso, but for the entire continent. Because this isn't about being anti-West. It's about proving that Africa doesn't need to ask for permission to care for its own. And that quiet revolution is making people nervous. Diplomats in Brussels, Washington, and Paris are watching closely. Not because they don't understand what's happening in Burkina Faso, but because they do. A housing project like this, with no foreign aid, no outside approval, and no elite benefit, is not just bold, it's dangerous. Because it offers a proof of concept, a model others might copy, a spark others might ignite. In Part 3, we'll explore the geopolitical reaction, why this project has Western powers whispering, China and Russia quietly cheering, and African youth dreaming bigger than ever before. And we'll ask the final question. Is Traoré just building a city, or is he starting a continent-wide movement? Leave a comment below. What do you think of the way this city was built? Is this how African cities should be designed from now on? Like the video if this gave you hope. Behind closed doors in Washington, Brussels, and Paris, officials aren't asking what is happening in Burkina Faso. They're asking how. How did one of Africa's poorest countries break the cycle? How did it launch a project of this scale? 50,000 homes, solar grids, smart design, 0 foreign loans, without them noticing? And more importantly, what happens if other countries follow? The silence from the West speaks louder than any speech. No formal recognition, no congratulatory messages, no glowing think tank reports or glossy profiles in development magazines. The usual architecture of praise, the panels, awards, international conferences, is missing. Why? Because what Traore has built doesn't fit the narrative. This city didn't emerge from the Western development playbook. It didn't ask for debt relief, consultants, or permission. And that makes it dangerous, because it proves something most global powers have spent decades trying to obscure: that Africa doesn't need managing. It needs room. And now, leaders across the global south are watching closely. In Niger, transitional authorities battling their own displacement crisis are reportedly studying Traore's blueprint. In Mali, engineers aligned with the current government have started surveying similar zones for people-first urban projects. Even in Guinea and Central African Republic, youth groups are beginning to rally behind the idea of cities built not for capital, but for recovery. This isn't a trend. It's not branding. It's a reorientation. For the first time in a generation, African leaders are seriously asking, what if we don't wait for permission to build? What if we stop modeling our cities after Europe and instead build for our own people in our own way? The shift is spreading beyond governments. Across university campuses, from Lusaka to Kampala, students are organizing design competitions inspired by Traore's project. Urban planning departments are assigning Traore City as a case study in sovereign development. On talk radio in Accra and Addis Ababa, the phones are ringing with one shared question: could we build this here? The energy is not just continental. The diaspora is waking up too. African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, Afro-Brazilians, many disillusioned by institutional neglect in their own countries, are looking at Traore's initiative with something more than curiosity. For them, it's not just a housing project in Burkina Faso. It's a proof of principle, that dignity can be designed and that home doesn't have to come with a mortgage or a compromise. In a time where Black communities around the world are reckoning with systemic inequality, this city has become something rare, a symbol of radical possibility. Not through slogans, but through bricks. Not through outrage, but through ownership. But with possibility comes pressure. Already there are whispers of quiet retaliation, currency scrutiny, delays in international funding pipelines, increased pressure on regional allies. Institutions built on Africa's dependency don't give up their influence easily. If this model spreads, it threatens an entire industry. Development banks, donor agencies, consultant networks, all of which depend on a continent that stays in need. Because if one city can be built debt-free, people-first, and fully sovereign, why not 10 more? And then the model breaks. That's why Traore's real challenge isn't just building houses. It's protecting the political space that made this possible. Because the more successful this city becomes, the more resistance it will face. Not just from outside powers, but from internal elites invested in the old ways. Already, some regional critics are trying to downplay the achievement. They say it's a populist stunt, that the homes are too basic, that the model is unsustainable. But when you speak to the people who now sleep under roofs they own, those criticisms ring hollow. One widow, who lost her husband to insurgent violence and spent 5 years raising her children in a plastic shelter, summed it up simply: I don't need it to be perfect. I just need it to be ours. And that's the whole point. This city isn't designed to win international architecture awards. It's not meant to boost GDP statistics or attract luxury real estate investors. It's built to repair people, to prove that progress doesn't need to be imported and that housing isn't a privilege. It's a birthright. For decades, African development has been growth-centric. Roads built to access mines, ports built for exports, cities built to attract foreign capital. In that logic, the poorest are always in the way, an inconvenience to be relocated, managed, or ignored. Traore's model flips that logic on its head. Instead of starting with what foreign investors want, it starts with what people lost and how to give it back. This isn't anti-West, it's post-dependence. It's a rejection of the idea that development must come through suffering, that dignity must wait for funding approval, that shelter must be earned through bureaucratic hoops. This city doesn't ask for validation. It offers evidence, And social media has turned that evidence into a spark. Daily video updates from the construction zones are going viral. Architects are live streaming design walkthroughs. Teenagers are filming TikToks showing before and after shots of their families' transitions from tents to homes. On Facebook, hashtags like #UrbanSovereignty and #BuildBackAfrica are trending. The continent is watching and talking and thinking aloud. For the first time, African cities are being imagined not as shadows of Europe or Asia, but as reflections of Africa's own memories, its own futures. And if that vision holds, Traoré may be remembered not just as the man who built a city, but as the one who helped an entire generation reimagine what it means to build at all. So what now? Will the movement survive pressure? Will more leaders choose people over protocols? Can this be replicated without compromise? It's too early to know, but one thing is certain. Burkina Faso has put forward a new template. Not just for housing, but for hope. And whether it becomes a movement depends on whether others are willing to build not just with bricks, but with courage. What do you think? Is Traoré City just a housing project? Or Africa's blueprint for a new era? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what this means to you. Like this video if you believe housing should be a human right. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story shaping Black futures. Thanks for watching. Stay bold, stay informed.